issues.
Now, just a minute. Now it's live. We're already live. Okay. So yeah, we were just talking just before we went live about this thing of, you know, having to look in a certain way, and you said you can't, you know, on Zoom you can't make eye contact with people properly.
Not when I want to do it lovingly and I care to look deeply into their eyes. And my eyes don't work that way. I have amblyopia, which means I can only see with one eye at a time. And the other one goes to lunch when I'm using this eye.
I have
always been painful to me that I couldn't do that. Or with students in a big classroom, I look around and I look at somebody, but because I can't look straight, they think somebody else is being called. It's just been an interesting difference, I would say, for most people, and not seeing 3D. Imagine that.
And you might think that people think these things, that you're looking one way and looking at something else. I have never known that.
Noticed. I know. I'm aware of that. Yes,
so we're so like I mean, probably all of us are obsessed with some aspects of what we look like or how we come across, and think that everybody else is staring at that one that one thing, and they're not paying. They haven't even noticed, you know.
Well, now they will. Talk about your hair, please.
Yeah, my hair. So I have this idea of what my hair is supposed to look like, and the more I try and get it to go the way I want it, the less it will do that. It's very uncooperative. Look at that. So at the end, you just have to let it go, because I'm not going to stop with the hairdresser.
And it really isn't about the essence of who we are.
Exactly. And what I was going to say when you were talking about how you can or can't make, I mean, the thing is also on Zoom, we can't actually look at one another. I can either I'm looking at the screen now, or I'm looking at the camera. So the two, I can't look in the camera and see you at the same time.
Okay. And I'm trying to look at you directly into your glasses, and whatever the camera does is whatever it does.
In actual fact, the way that we are connecting is with something else. You know, we're connecting with our being, with our energy, with our soul. You know.
Yes, and I know that. Despite all of it, I'm aware of it when I'm obsessing about whatever, my eyes or my makeup or whatever. I wish to be seen as more perfect than I am.
Yeah.
Or to say it differently, knowing that it's as perfect as it's ever going to be already. I might as well relax.
Yeah, it couldn't get better than this. Yeah. And there's an interesting thing about when I was learning to make videos, to go online, I learned a really important principle is that you record, you upload the first video you make. Because every time you redo it, you become a little bit less real, a little bit more fake.
And I would totally agree with that.
And it was a great relief for me to understand that principle, because that's kind of how I work. Is I'm not. It's not about perfection, and it's not about delivering the best possible thing, because all of that stuff really gets in the way, which comes to me wanting to ask you, do you remember where we first met?
Yes, it was at a Integral conference in Budapest, I think.
Yeah.
And I took it was in Budapest, in a gigantic hall, remember, with the big, what would you call that? A claw that was hanging over the stage. And I was always thinking, oh my God, if this thing's let go.
It was the most bizarre building. I remember it had all kinds of strange features, like the workshop space that I was given to do a workshop in had no ceiling.
I
And
think
instead of a ceiling, it had a bridge going over it with people standing on the bridge looking in to the workshop from above. Like I've never in my life ever, who would have thought of designing a workshop space like that? And the space had no door and no carpet. It was all
and we
very,
still had fun, remember?
yeah.
I remember many pieces of it. Anyway, that's how I met you, and I loved it. It was the best part of the whole conference. I had a keynote, but it didn't matter. And then you also gave me your a nose for my keynote, so I could have it with me to remember.
Yeah,
Being a fool, which I also theoretically always talk about, was actually to be carried with you wherever you go.
yeah,
Capacity to laugh at yourself and at everybody else as well. I mean, I'm saying or writing even that we're all bozos on the same bus. So,
yeah,
yes, that was what connected us. That
yeah.
and
And you know, when I went to that conference, um, I felt really a very strong call to put in an application to present at that conference. But it was the first integral conference in Europe, and I didn't know anything about integral theory, nothing. So
okay.
I found myself surrounded by all these very clever people with all this theoretical, magnificent thinking. And part of me, I was like, what on earth am I doing here? How did I end up here? But I came to see that I'm often drawn into situations or groups or organizations or spiritual groups of different kinds where there's fantastic theory, fantastic thinking, and brilliant minds, and people don't have much connection with their own body, with how is this all actually expressed. So I think that's why I was there. Something to do with that.
And then the next time, remember, we uh, gathered together with Doshin Nelson, the Zen master, and we created initially for the beginning of the workshop a lecture by myself on the Fool, and then an actual beautiful workshop with the whole crowd there, a huge crowd, the biggest room, and it was a blast.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And what was really my intention partially was to change the tenor of the conference instead of being so heady and so attached to ideas, to actually be there. And we taught everybody the, what do we call it even? The greeting,
The
the full
greeting,
greeting.
full greeting. So it
Yes,
was built on the idea of a red nose, I think.
yes,
The idea of a red,
round,
and of course people didn't actually have red noses, but we did this, the
yes.
nose, and then we did this.
And when we were in live space together, we even hooked up our
The little
pinkies.
fingers, yeah.
Yes.
And it was brilliant because you did, even just doing that, first of all, just is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And then to do this is also silly. And then to come close to another person doing it has this intimate feeling as well, and connection feeling.
And you almost can't help but smiling.
Yeah, yeah.
If you dare to do it, there were a few people who didn't, but most did. And the other crazy thing we did, and that was your invention, or we had the invention together, but you found the piece to do. Remember the big scroll where we took the, what do you call it, when you have to sign a
Right.
contract, and it's endless, let's say a Facebook contract, and you
It's
never read it because it would be absolutely impossible to, well, Angela, you changed it into something that was, I still have it, it's absolutely hilariously giving your life away, remember that?
Yeah. Sign your serious life away contract.
Yes,
That's what we call it.
yes,
I was looking at it the other day because some of it is just, and the original is so bizarre. What we actually, we're signing these things willy nilly without
well,
ever
because you
reading.
can't possibly read them or even understand them. They're so legalese.
They're so legalese and they're so long. It's unbelievable. So we printed out our version of that, this sign your serious life away contract, and it wasn't any longer than the original. When you print it out, it's like yards, and it's like 15 yards long or something. It's absolutely incredible.
Yes, it was. And we had people sign it, a commitment like any other contract. And lots of people did. And
Yeah,
they got a sticker that said with the full pic image on it, which said
yeah.
they were part of the signed contract. And for the rest of the conference, people walked around with that and with their full logo on and their name tag.
With
And
a lot of pride, with a
Hmm?
lot of pride that they had the full thing on their name tag.
It
I
worked.
I think that the idea and what you wanted to achieve happened.
Yeah, I agree. We did together. It worked just beautifully, the three of us. And
Yeah,
of course, Doshin did sacred laughter, Zen laughter, as part of what we did together. So
yeah,
yeah, that was great. So that's how I know you, Angela, from those two occasions.
yeah. And we also got to know each other a bit in the preparation of that second
Yes.
conference in endless calls of trying. What I remember was trying to. Maybe you should say a little bit about your background and work for people who don't know you at all. But for me, it was a big journey for my work to meet yours. In
Okay.
those, yeah,
I'm happy to. I'm an integral person. I was part of the initial Integral Institute in 2000, and I got there. I got invited by Ken to do that because of my research. I have probably the largest empirical set of data, and for once you can actually see some of it behind me. There are really 6,000 sentence completion tests that I have scored in addition to others, but these I have in my own database. And it's a test that looks at human development, adult development. How broad and how deeply are you aware of your context, of your inner life, of what's around you, and how do you deal with it? How close can you get? How aware in the moment can you become? And so that fit actually what you were doing in the workshop in another way as well, from a maybe slightly more theoretical point of view. And I've written about the fool and how late stages in adult development actually become more aware that we are all fools.
yeah. Can you
So
say a bit more about that from your?
just that when we discover that the selves we have created so diligently and with so much work in growing up, which everybody has to do. The ego we have, and finally we say, okay, I know who I am. I know my boundaries. I know who you are. I can analyze the world, I can put it in little things and compare it to all the scientific things and feel good about that. And then perhaps at some moments you realize, oh my God, everything's constructed. This is not actually me. This is just a shape. This is just a form I'm having created in order to present myself to the world and to myself. And then you start to get beyond that and recall the difference. Conventional, perfectly good. Now 80% of the world is that way. And post-conventional, when you start to realize that you have been brainwashed all your life by your language, by your parents, by school, by your culture overall.
Mm,
Certain values, certain ideas but just you imbibe them. You didn't have any choice. And then when you can step out and look at the whole kit and caboodle and say, oh my lordy, this is not only true for me, this is true for everybody else. They have been programmed, if you will, to look at the world in a certain way. And then you find that actually fascinating. How interesting. You think of it that way. I think of it this way. How can we come together despite the differences?
And what you've just described, is that what's called a later stage of development, or is
Early late. I mean, this is early post convention. Very late is when you really come to the full realization that it's all made up. There's no final story that is true. It's all story.
yeah,
Even the big religions, they're useful. We never say this is not good. It shouldn't be like that. We say it is part of being a human being to need a coherent story. To be able to say, I'm here for those reasons, this is how the world works. And whatever theories we have about that, we usually get quite attached to. And they're necessary.
and so then is it like the mystical areas of religion that are more later stage, where there's more unknown and mystery?
Yeah, one of the recognitions of late stage would be that there is way more mystery than knowledge. The more you know, that actually the more you realize just how little you know,
Yeah.
and that it's an illusion what you think you know. Uh, but there are people at all stages who can come to the sort of the spiritual recognition of that, or the training. They may not necessarily be highly developed in growing up. We make that distinction between growing up and waking up. And it's possible to be, we know that from many gurus that came to the West and really behaved very immature. But clearly, their spiritual awakening was present and could be taught to students.
Yeah.
And there are people who are fairly mature as human beings, but not interested in spiritual stuff. And you can tell just the way I say stuff, you can tell which side I'm on. No, I'm not. I mean, I'm going to the Zen Sanghas, I go to retreats, but deep down, I question even those stories. Uh, and that's fine. I think we really need stories. And you were a storyteller. I remember when you first introduced yourself, that was one of the ways you said you were.
Yeah. I mean, the part of me that's the storyteller is from this tradition of Scottish traditional storytelling, where the storytellers are retelling stories that have been told for centuries, because they've survived centuries, because they carry something useful for people to know.
Yep.
And so that's the area of storytelling that I spent most of my performance life with. And but then the other aspect is what a traditional storyteller is doing is holding a space,
Yes.
and there's a lovely definition of storyteller from one of the Inuit languages. I don't know which one. And the definition of storyteller is a person who creates an atmosphere in which wisdom can reveal herself.
Mm.
So there's this, the storyteller is holding a space, and hopefully the wisdom will come through for the benefit of the collective, but also the wisdom is coming, if this, it looks like there's a storyteller at the front of an audience telling a story, but the wisdom is actually coming also through the people who are receiving. They're listening and they're open and they're receiving wisdom in their own ways, in whatever's useful for them as they listen to some
Yes.
story. Yeah.
So by creating the container and holding the space, there's also emergent qualities that
Exactly.
can come out of the collective that wouldn't be there if you just looked at the individuals there. Or
Yeah.
yeah, sure,
And,
that's part
and
of.
immediately that emergent space, in my experience, immediately closes when people want to do something like analyze the story. And so what does this story mean? Let's now talk about what it means. And it's like it will shuts like that.
Let it act on you.
Yeah. And everybody's having a different experience. You know, if there are 100 people there's actually 100 different stories being experienced, because people are receiving what they're receiving, and they're interacting with what they're receiving in a completely unique way.
And that's also true for the more cognitive assessment of perception. If you give a word, any word, I mean, in my case, it would be development, and you tell people, draw it. Guess what? How many pictures do you get? As many pictures as people who use that word. Even though we agree verbally that we mean the same thing, we don't.
Yeah. And this is really important. When we were talking just before we went live about culture, you know, like you take a Western idea and assume that it's going to fit all over the world, and it will fit, for example, in the African continent. And it's like there's an unbelievable arrogance and stupidity built into the idea right from the very beginning that we've got our clever idea, and we're going to bring it to you, and you will be much better, the better for it.
Yes, and that is a big thing of European Western colonialism. Since then, that is a primary way of how we have dealt with the world without being aware what we're doing. Just how it is denigrating. I'm using that word particularly, making black, not giving credence to the beauty and the wisdom that is in indigenous cultures of all kinds, not just black, but black as well. Yeah.
And
It's really.
I was in a conversation a couple of months ago with, I can't remember now, but they were inviting people from all around the world to contribute, and it was about language.
Mm-hmm.
And the sophistication of ideas in one of the African languages that was represented. Like, we have no idea. It's so evolved in terms of the collective and we, that we haven't got anywhere close to yet.
Yes, and I mean, there's simple examples like words. There is nothing as precious as Schadenfreude. The joy in having somebody have a small, not a huge, but a small mishap, like slipping on a banana, that kind of basic thing, that there is actually pleasure in that. And there's a word for that, but not in English. English has adopted the German word for that because it didn't exist.
Yeah.
And there are hundreds of examples like that. And that's still a related language. Go to completely different languages, and the whole world looks different. What it means to be a human being looks different. What's valued is different. How I orient myself in space is different. And you think of the Aboriginal song lines in Australia, completely different. We couldn't function even if we try with the best intentions to learn that, we can. It has to be embedded from ages, as you said, with the Scottish stories. They have to have that. You can't just go and learn it. You can't. Your mind won't do it.
And we live in such a culture of, just give me the 3 keys to blah 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 and I will have it, you know, the 3 secrets of
the 7 steps to happiness, the 12 whatever. Yes. And again, I have some compassion for people wanting to improve themselves. And as the fool We just have to laugh. It's a good intention. It's worthwhile doing, and it's hopeless.
It's a waste of time.
I think we agree on that one as well. Yeah. And we're not saying it is being a human being to do all of these things, to want to improve, to want to look perfect.
Yeah, to have the nice hair and the...
Yes, all of that.
I wonder what the world would be like. Wouldn't it be nice if we could have a proper April Fool's Day, once a year, where everybody just relaxed about the whole thing?
It is hard because we do feel the conventional pressures are so enormous. Of how, just think of the celebrity worship and all of that. The examples we're given how we ought to be, and unless you are a bit more mature, you can't look at that and put it aside enough to have some distance to it and say that's fine with you. I don't care, or
Yeah.
Because people do care. And they are sensitive and vulnerable and defend.
I think the role of comedy and comedians is a help in the right direction, because the comedians get have the nerve to say what other people are thinking but don't dare say, and they kind of put themselves out there on the line, and they suffer being accused of being not PC and not this and not that, but they actually serve
a big function, yes.
massively important function in all cultures.
Yes, and often I myself enjoy improv because it's one of the best places to really become a fool
Yeah.
and fall down. I mean, you possibly I'm not quick-witted. I'm more of a contemplative thinker, but also this is the perfect thing to get me to a place where I just have to let go and and be that kind of ease with whatever is, whatever happens. And I do recommend it to some of my clients if they're the right constellation. I said, why don't you try that? Why don't you, usually post conventional folks, why don't you go and see what improv does for you?
I think one of the best things about improv is is that you practice failing.
Yes, and applaud.
You practice getting used to the feeling of everything falls to pieces.
Yes,
And you don't. It's not the end of the world. You don't die, and I think so many of our problems, or people's problems, come from the fear of that happening, that they
yes.
won't survive, that they won't, that they can't imagine being seen in a place of such vulnerability that failure is about. But it's so empowering to be able to fail and get up, and fail and get up, and fail and get up.
Learn from what you fail and do. I've taught my grandchildren to when we do play and target shooting, whatever. Whenever it goes wrong, we applaud.
Yeah.
Say missed and applaud.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. That ease. And also, what I think about my tagline for my coaching business is saying yes to life. And isn't that one of the fundamental rules of improv? Is no matter what happens, it's yes. It's never no, I won't do it, or no, I can't do that. It's always yes, and you go ahead.
It's also built into the clown, in clown exercises. So people learning clowning, they will be asked to, as a clown, to do something that they can't do. But the clown's automatic response is always yes. Even though when you say yes, you can see that they don't know how to do it. It's beautiful, this moment of yes, I can perform that opera now. I can.
and then it causes hilarity and joy all around. That's part of what that lightness. It's also the lightness of being when you don't take yourself so darn seriously. That then is infectious.
Yeah.
It releases others from having to be so serious and strict and all of those things. We can let go and
Yeah.
enjoy just the moment, just the foolishness, just the silliness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are you up to these days? You live in, do you live in Boston or do you live near Boston?
Nearby, I live near Walden Pond. For those listeners who might know about Thoreau's Walden, I live 5 minutes from that pond. In that environment, the beautiful big properties with trees and animals, no sidewalks, no fences. It's all open. We have owls and foxes and deer, and they eat all my salads. Every year I try to have a little bit a garden, and it's totally joyfully useless.
They're like that. Let's go and eat that woman's salad. Okay.
They bring their whole the groundhogs bring their whole families and teach the little ones how to go eat salad from my. And now we just, my husband, do we just sit there and laugh? I mean, it's precious, and we don't really need this. We don't need to provide for ourselves in that sense. It's more for the beauty of working with the earth and having things grow and having critters come and eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I live in a very nice neighborhood. Now that we're getting older, it's becoming a bit of an issue because in the winter, with no lights, with no and ice and snow, um, yeah, we have to think about moving somewhere more practical.
Mm.
But
And
well done.
what are you engaged with in your work or in your free time apart from growing salad?
I'm still occasionally paper cutting, which is a craft that I brought from Switzerland. I'm writing several books, one on ego development, which is the toughest, then one about a thing I call, because I took a course once called the having of wonderful ideas. And so I collected over the years moments of aha moments that came my way, mostly because of teachers or something I saw. And I think I'll write about that, just little essays. And then finally, I'm working with an Australian colleague uh, on writing a simple book for uh, ordinary folks, not a theoretical books. And we're talking, he and I have names for our animal names for ourselves, and we will write in those voices. I
Huh.
can't reveal yet, but that's the intention,
That's
about values, about all the things that are of interest to people uh, who want to know what's out there. The adult development theories are still not very well broadly understood, that adults grow as well, not just children, and what the benefits might be, and also the drawbacks. I mean, you can get so complex, as you know from the conferences. It's painful, what I call head gymnastics. We can do these things. We can get
what's
very
people.
complex.
I
Huh?
mean, it depends on where you're oriented. I mean, people who love ideas would just soak up uh, such a conference. Um,
They are wonderful, yes. And some of it is painfully heady.
yeah,
But it takes those of us as well. It takes the laborer and it takes everybody, the artists, it takes the workers, it takes really everybody for the world to work. Yes. And it takes Angelas to bring some sport and some joy and some practice into these stuffy organizations, or the heavily heady ones.
yeah.
That's a beautiful uh, purpose, a beautiful thing. Are you writing about it too, so we can read about it?
Well, I'm actually starting to work on a big course,
Yeah.
and that involves me writing about what I do or some aspects of what I do, and I feel I need to write more. Having been, mostly a practitioner for 30 years without really writing very much, I just keep doing it, doing. Now, it would be nice to pass things on in a format that more people can benefit from.
Yes, I would certainly encourage that. I would love to have more instruction. That's, of course, I love the real one best, being in the same spot and just playing around. But second to that would be to have some instructions or some ideas of what people could do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been one of the blessings for me of the COVID time has been that I learned to teach online, and I was very resistant.
Oh,
To,
you were.
yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't believe that I could really teach online, and then I was forced to find out how to do it.
Yes.
And I've had a lot of fun, and also moments of almost like transcendent, amazing bliss,
Yes.
because somehow this online format, when we're restricted in so many ways. We can't be together in a space, and we can't do this and we can't do that. Instead, in order to connect deeply with other people, we have to sort of hone some other skills. So we have to hone the heart space and our intuition and our our intention and desire to connect with somebody else. And when those capacities are all being practiced by a group of people online, it's beautiful.
It's marvelous, and we can reach so much further. We can reach across the world easily.
Yeah.
That too is I because of as a coach, I have clients all over the world. Uh, so that has the Zoom kinds of things has not been new to me, but I'm learning too. I'm learning to do good breakout rooms, all kinds of things, and in making those alive as a one-on-one, or when you teach us, as you say, one can have oodles of fun and actually move people, which is
Yeah, because
wonderful.
I've experienced in person work the problems or the challenges of any group of people or any particular day. Things present a challenge, and then I have to work out how to react, how to move with that challenge, and the online space is the same. So here's this puzzle. How do we create, or how do we open to aliveness and connection in this format, in this with this language? And when I think about it as a puzzle to work on, it starts to open up. If I just think, oh, Zoom is rubbish, I don't want to be in a Zoom meeting, then nothing will open up.
No, then it closes in contact. People can sense that, yes.
And so that's when people get very tired in Zoom meetings, because people get tired because they're basically sitting in front of a computer and are not connected.
No, they're not. And we can make a difference. Your own spontaneity, your capacity to actually listen and even sense when somebody is tuning out is going to make a difference in how it evolves and how you hold the thing. That's the skill that we do need to practice and learn.
Yeah.
And some basic rules. I mean, people should not have their iPhones next to them to check emails or that sort of thing while they're in a meeting. Now I'm talking more of a business meeting or so. There's basic rules you can have. Not allowed. When you're here, you're here. If you aren't fully here, don't come.
Yeah, and what I notice is in some of the workshops that I do, when people start writing, you cannot be writing down an exercise and be in it fully at the same time. When you're writing down, you move into a mental space. You're starting to think about, you're thinking about it, you're thinking about how you're going to use it somewhere else in the future, and then you're not here. So
so we're learning, we're trying to enjoy being, not enjoy, it's not a thing we do, it's just being spontaneous, uh, being here now with
yeah,
each other, with
yeah.
all the, what do you call it, clay feet, and sometimes I feel it's both angel wings and clay feet.
Mm.
The inspiring part, the capacity to even lift other others up, but also we bring our clay feet, we bring our warts and whatever it's called in English. The, what do you call it? Warts and,
What we say, warts and all.
yes, that, that's part of also of being here and just being here. Yeah.
And I noticed that when people, almost in any group of people, when somebody tells the truth, they just say how they really feel, or they say something which might not be fitting, but it's heavy with them, and they share it. It does something. It softens everybody. You know, when somebody is in pain, for example, and they think that they can't talk about this pain because it doesn't fit with what we're doing, but they actually, when they actually do it, first of all, they become more present because they're now not hiding, and
Yeah.
the effect on the rest of us is we soften because somebody is in pain.
And I would say we then are allowed ourselves more to be real
Yeah,
with
exactly.
our own pain.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the whole field opens a bit more because more of us has been included.
Yes. Yes.
Or, for example, in a space, I often notice in a workshop when if somebody cries, they get touched and they cry, and they'll say something like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to spoil it, and I'm sorry, and I shouldn't." It's like it's the opposite. It's a gift because when somebody cries, it opens up that now we're all allowed to cry. And it's
Yes.
bizarre. It also happens with laughter. People, even in the workshops that I do, will even apologize for laughing because the conditioning is so strong
Well,
that we
yeah.
mustn't lose it and we mustn't laugh. And I'm sorry, I'm not laughing at you and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like each one of these are like taboos that each time we move through one, we open up for more of us collectively. More is allowed and more is allowed and more is allowed.
And we so agree on that.
Yeah.
So maybe we will meet once. I don't know where. I've sort of sworn off going to conferences because I'm just, again, it's a bit getting very difficult to get around. But I miss it, of course, as well. Are you ever coming to Boston to do a workshop? I'll be there.
Who knows? Who knows? I was in New York in November. I had been on the West Coast and done some stuff, and then I was trying to do this. It's very interesting. I had set up this second workshop in New York, and then the closer I got to it, the more I could feel that I just wasn't in the place to do it. I was so tired,
Hmm.
and in the end, I had to listen to that. So we changed it, and we said, okay, instead of Friday to Sunday, let's make it Friday and Saturday. And then it got closer and it was like, no, it's too much. So then it was like, okay, then we do Saturday. And in the end, the whole thing was cancelled because well, I mean, I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but the kind of work that I do, I have to be in a space where I can do the work and I can hold a group. And if I'm not, it's better not to do it.
And that's part of being aware, as well as being aware of our limits, aware of how tired we are, how many resources we have, both energy and internal, just as yes. But respecting that is part of what we all have to learn too, between self-care and other care, and finding a workable dynamic balance between the two.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we are, as women especially, we are conditioned to err on the side of other care.
Yeah.
Till exhaustion, till, so that's great if you can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it was a massive achievement because I almost never cancel anything.
So now,
Even an arrangement to meet somebody, I'm like, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, sort of thing.
I'm trying to think. Commitments like the one you and I had, the trouble I went through to get to this meeting. That I would do, but in other sense, I can also say no because I really know some of the increasing limits of mobility and all that.
And also, it's not just about limits, it's about listening to what each of us is supposed to be doing at any point, or
Yes.
what each of us,
What's
what's the best thing for me to be doing?
what's yours to do, and what's maybe could somebody else could do. Yes. What
Yeah,
is yours, uniquely yours to do. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And we find that. Yeah.
But even if I don't get to Boston, maybe we'll meet online. Maybe you'll be
We
in
can
some kind of,
meet again, or if you do a course online, let me know.
yeah,
And if you do get to New York, I'll also come to New York. I don't go much further these days, but
yeah.
yes.
Well, I have family there, so it's not impossible.
Okay, let me know.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it was very, very nice to spend this time with you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Same here. I've always enjoyed every minute with you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.